5 minutes ago, Pope Leo XIV found the lost dialogue between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. For centuries, scholars have searched for something that seemed lost forever, the hidden link between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. But what no one expected was that this link, an ancient manuscript sealed with forgotten symbols, would appear of all places in the basement of the Vatican. And the most surprising thing, the person who found it was Pope Leo XIV himself. Before we continue, if you are a true Christian, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on which city you are watching us from, so that we can include you in our prayers. Confidential sources claim that he read the contents alone, by candlelight, inside a restricted chamber where only popes have access. And when he finished, he said nothing, no homily, no pronouncement, just silence. A silence so profound that echoed through the stone corridors of the Holy See. What was in that lost dialogue between the Master and the one many consider his closest disciple? And why, after reading it, did the Pope decide to hide everything again? It is said that when Leo XIV finished reading the first words attributed to Jesus and Mary Magdalene, he remained motionless for long minutes. One of the guards of the papal chamber, who did not have access to the document but was standing outside the door, reported that the Holy Father let out a slight sigh, as if he had just carried the weight of millennia of secrets. According to these same sources, the opening words of the manuscript were neither dogmatic nor theological. They were intimate, almost human, something about walking together, even when the world does not understand pure love. Leo XIV is said to have whispered a single sentence after reading it: "They would never accept." It's not clear who he meant by them, the cardinals, the people, or perhaps the very structure he now leads. But one thing is clear: that text profoundly shook not only the mind, but the soul of the Pope. And that's when he made a decision that would change everything, or perhaps bury it all again. Leo XIV could have made history. He could have announced to the world that an ancient text attributed directly to the Messiah and the most controversial figure of early Christianity had been found on sacred ground. Any other leader might have summoned the press, organized synods, gathered the greatest experts. But Leo XIV? No. He kept quiet. Behind the scenes in the Curia, it is said that he read the manuscript 3 times on 3 different days before locking it away again in the safe under the seal of the Holy Apostolic Penitentiary. Why? Because, according to sources close to the Pope, it was not a truth that needed to be defended, but a truth that needed to be protected. Leo XIV does not fear revelation. He fears the use that would be made of it. At a time when faith is disputed by political narratives, when spirituality is transformed into a spectacle, the Pope has chosen a path that few understand: the preservation of mysticism. By not divulging, he is not denying, he is simply protecting. This decision reveals not weakness, but depth, a rare conviction that there are sacred words that were spoken for the depths of the soul, not for the clamor of the crowds. Among all the lines that made up that manuscript, there was one that seemed to have been written not with ink, but with tears. A simple phrase, but charged with such profound spiritual power that, as he read it in a low voice in the private chapel, Leo XIV could not contain his emotion. The trembling hands, the teary eyes, and the absolute silence that followed marked the moment. The phrase attributed to Mary Magdalene said, "He did not save me from perdition. He gave me back to myself." At that moment, time seemed to stand still. It was as if the very meaning of redemption took on a new shape. not as atonement for sins, but as a reunion with one's own essence. Leo XIV understood what not everyone dares to admit, that the historical Christ and the intimate Christ are layers of the same light, and that Mary Magdalene was not only a witness, but also the guardian of a silent and forgotten truth. There was no way to turn that revelation into dogma. It was something to be felt, and there, alone, the Pope felt it. Since assuming the throne of Peter, Leo XIV had been called by many as the Pope of Silence, not for lack of action, but for his profound gaze, restrained gestures, and a spirituality that was not imposed by words, but by presence. To those who saw him from the outside, this was just part of his reserved personality. But that manuscript revealed something else, a mission that had been cultivated in secret. Leo XIV understood that his journey was about more than guiding the Church. It was about protecting a sacred memory, a kind of truth that is not proclaimed from pulpits, but is transmitted between awakened souls. The lost dialogue was a mirror of the very mission he had unknowingly accepted: to restore the sacred feminine, the silent compassion, the divine mystery that unites, not separates. He finally understood why, from a young age, he had felt the call to protect what was not yet allowed to be revealed, and he decided to continue doing so, not with scandals or revolutions, but with firmness, courage, and silence. A few days after the manuscript fell into his hands, a surprising decision was made by Leo XIV. Without fanfare, without a press conference, just a discreet statement that was understood by few but felt by many. He appointed a woman theologian to an unprecedented advisory position within the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, something that until then had seemed impossible in the most conservative backrooms of the Vatican. This appointment was not merely administrative. It was symbolic. That woman, discreet, spiritual, and firm, brought into her life something that echoed what was written in that dialogue between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Leo XIV knew he was opening a small breach in a 1,000-year wall. It was not about breaking rules, it was about recalling the essence of something that had been erased over time. In doing so, he did not cite the manuscript. He did not reveal his motivations, but those who knew him well noticed the sparkle in his eyes. It was as if he were accomplishing something greater than a simple administrative act. It was the first visible step of an invisible mission. The document had no title, just a series of aged pages written in Aramaic and ancient Greek, interspersed with symbols that recalled both the Dead Sea Scrolls and the apocryphal fragments of Nag Hammadi. As Vatican experts began to analyze it, one thing became clear: this text was not a modern forgery. Its origins date back to the 1st century, but it was not registered in any of the Holy See's official catalogs. How did a manuscript with such content, in such a state of preservation, end up in the secret archives? And what's more, why was there a label attached to it with the words in Latin, "Open only if necessary"? This handwritten phrase was next to the seal of a cardinal who had been dead for over 300 years, known for his involvement in silent esoteric orders within the Church. Scholars suspect that this document was removed from circulation in one of the great purges of learning that began in the 4th century, when texts considered dangerous to official doctrine were condemned to oblivion. Others believe that it was protected by a silent minority within the clergy who kept it alive for the right time. And that time, for Leo XIV, had finally arrived. There was no official statement, no letter was written, no images were released, but something happened that afternoon. After hours locked in his private room, holding the manuscript with the supposed words of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, Pope Leo XIV came out in silence. His eyes were wet, but his face was firm. He walked straight to the Pauline Chapel, one of the oldest and most guarded in the Vatican, and remained there kneeling for exactly 43 minutes. He did not say a single word. He simply prayed. From the outside, few noticed, but those who did never forgot. One cardinal whispered that, as he left, the Pope kissed the floor of the chapel. Another reported that he left a small stone on the altar, a simple but deeply symbolic gesture that no one could explain. The news spread quietly through the corridors of the Vatican. Something had changed, not just in the Pope, but perhaps in the spiritual course of the Church. And it all began with that text, kept in silence. But what if this manuscript is actually real? What if Pope Leo XIV's silent gesture is the only answer he can give to the world without breaking vows that will never be explained to us? The Church has kept secrets for centuries, but perhaps the most important of them lies precisely in the words that were not said and in the silence that still echoes within the walls of the Vatican. Do you believe this dialogue really took place? Or is all this just another layer of the veil that prevents us from seeing the truth? The Church has kept secrets for centuries, but perhaps the most important of them lies precisely in the words that were not said and in the silence that still echoes within the walls of the Vatican. Do you believe this dialogue really took place? Or is all this just another layer of the veil that prevents us from seeing the truth? Comment below with the word silence if you also felt something different with this story.